This is something very different. The Whale Toastmasters Club has never done this before, meaning we've never brought in an author and interviewed them. Oh yeah, sure, we brought in some guest speakers and we've had them come and give us their keynote speech. Yet this is the first time where we're taking our message to another level. We are stretching our communication skills this year. We're taking on many experiences this year. And Mr. Burton, you're helping us to kick that off.
All right. Very good, very good.
Very good. As I mentioned, some of you know that I was driving in my car about a month ago. And I'm listening in rush hour traffic, trying to get to Schaumburg on my way to teach a 6-hour workshop. And I'm listening to Tom Joyner. And on the radio, Tom Joyner is talking about this man in the little known Black History fact. So here I am listening intently, and I went, that man sounds like he has some Toastmaster skills. And as he's talking about the fact that he was one of the first U.S. deputy marshals, how he was an African-American man during the time of slavery, he was a former slave, and he actually had an opportunity to capture the most outlaws than anyone in the history of the U.S. Deputy Marshal Service. And so Tom Joyner says, and this is according to R.T. Burton. And I went, I know him. As the wind is taking away our notes, the first card is actually telling you that. So I got the little script here, and my first card is actually telling you that. And one of the things I have here that I wrote down, Art, that I wanted to ask you, because I know Tom Joyner mentioned your reference, he mentioned your research here, and I knew a couple of years about all the work that you had done. You basically focus on the African American experience, frontier experience, cowboys even, hence the hat, and how you guys like the hat? How you like this hat? See? And with what you do, Art, you have been researching for quite some time this story of Bass Reeves. Can you give everyone a little bit more insight as to why Bass Reeves in particular? Why did you research him?
Sure, I'd be glad to. First off, I'd like to say I'm very happy to be here with Toastmasters. So this is something new for me, and very excited about being here with you. And actually, you know, my mother's family live in Oklahoma, and I have a lot of Native Americans that I went to school with when I went to school in Oklahoma. And in Native American culture, they say when you can hear the leaves in the trees, that's the spirits talking, which is very interesting. So sometimes you listen to those leaves. But anyway, you were saying about Bass Reeves. The story about Bass Reeves is that something that kind of jumped on me like a grizzly bear one day. I had wrote a column for the South Suburban Standard newspaper for 13 years on blues and jazz, which I always felt was the area that I knew the most about. And I went to a family reunion in Oklahoma. And just in the casual conversation, we started talking about the lack of African American history that was being documented. And my cousin, who I was with, his roommate was with us, and his roommate stated that he was from Reeves Edition in Muskogee, and it was named for a black lawman named Bass Reeves. And so a light bulb went off in my head. I said, well, I could probably write an article about this guy if I got enough information on him. And I started asking my cousins in Oklahoma to find all the old people they could find. And, you know, give me their phone numbers and I call them up. And so when I called them up, it was like they were saying, yeah, Bass Reeves would arrest Jesse James. He'd arrest Billy the Kid. He'd arrest just anybody famous you could think of. And my first reaction was that, you know, these people had good, you know, sentiments, but this is kind of off the track. Because, you know, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and there was a lot of Westerns on TV. You didn't see no black people. And here they talking about a black lawman that at that particular time I was having problems with, because when I first started going to Oklahoma, Jim Crow was very strong. And you just wouldn't think that back in the frontier days they would have black lawmen arresting white people. And so, you know, I had real problems with that. So I sent a note off to the University of Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which is the largest state university in Muskogee, where Bass Reeves died, and I asked them about Reeves Addition. And they sent me a map and a lot of information. They said, well, Reeves Addition is actually named for a white banker. But the majority of the people that live in Reeves Addition today are African American, and they just think that Bass Reeves lived there, and that's why they named the addition Reeves Addition, but it wasn't that at all. And so that kind of shot down that angle of writing the particular article I wanted to write. And I remember there was a barber from Evanston who moved to Denver, Colorado, and started a museum called the Black West Museum. And he was in the basement of a black radio station in Denver, Colorado. And so I called him up and I asked him, I said, was there any black lawman in the Wild West of note that you ever heard of? And the first thing out his mouth was Bass Reeves. And that kind of caught me by surprise. And I said, well, what do you know about him? He said, well, I don't know too much about him, but he said, there's a couple of old guys from Oklahoma here in Denver. He said, that's all they talk about. And he said, there's one guy named Reverend Haskell Shoeboot, said that Bass Reeves used to walk the streets of Muskogee with a sidekick. And the sidekick would carry a satchel full of pistols. And if somebody called Bass's name, he'd always put his back up against the wall before he turned around. So I said, that's the person I need to talk to. I said, do you have a phone number? He said, no, I haven't really seen him in 2 or 3 years, you know. So I called the operator up in Denver and told her I wanted to speak to Reverend Haskell Shoeboot. And she had a listing for him, which was kind of interesting. Because most of the time when people are old, they stay with relatives or they stay in a senior home and they don't have phones. And so I dialed the number, the lady answered the phone, and Reverend Haskell Shoeboot sounded like he'd been dead for about 10 years. And I told him I was trying to get some information on Bass Reeves, and he laughed. And then he went on to say that Bass could outfight, outshoot, outride, outwhoop, out blah, blah, blah. Almost the same thing that other people had told me that I really couldn't do much with. And it was at that point in time, he said, I'll tell you something I see in my own eyes. And he repeated that several times. And Reverend Shoeboot told me he was 98 years old when we were having this phone conversation. And he said when he was a young man, he would drive the hack. And I had to stop him. I said, what is a hack? And he said, he laughed about that. He said it was a horse carriage, you know. That was the nickname they used to give to him. And so if I'd have thought about it, I remember they used to call hacks, the taxis on the south side back in the day, used to call those hacks too. But anyway, he said there was this white lawman named Bud Ledbetter, had a large posse after an outlaw that he was trying to catch. And I'm always asking people questions. Number one, I asked him, was the outlaw white or black? He said the outlaw was white. And I said to myself, well, okay, here we go again. Because a lot of these older folks I talked to on the phones would tell me about Bass arresting white people. I had a lot of problems with that initially. And so then I asked him who else was in the posse. And he said there was a deputy named Depew in the posse. And I later found a deputy Depew that worked for the Muskogee Federal Court. But anyway, he said that Ledbetter, who was in charge of the posse, had this outlaw hemmed in at Gibson Station, 12 miles north of Muskogee. And evidently he did something that was pretty bad because they was trying to kill him. And so they were shooting at him, and he was hunkered down, and they couldn't hit him. And he said by the middle of the day, Bud Ledbetter became irate because basically they were shooting up his inventory, his bullets. Those are bullets he had to pay for and account for, you know. And so he said that Bud Ledbetter told somebody in the posse to go back to Muskogee and get Bass Reeves. Now he said that this was around 1904. This had been late in Bass Reeves' career. But he said that Bass Reeves came on the scene late in the day. The sun had started to go down. The posse had quit shooting at this guy who was hunkered in real well. And then he said this outlaw jumped up. And I have a Hollywood mentality because I watch so many westerns on TV and the movies. I'm saying, okay, he's going to jump up and make a run for his horse. He said he jumped up and ran and started running across this field. That burst my Hollywood bubble right there, you know, just completely, you know, because I'm thinking he should jump up and get off on his horse, you know, so that burst that. So he said the posse started shooting at this man as he was running. And he said that they were missing. And Bud Ledbetter hollered at the top of his voice, "Get him, Bass!" And he said, Bass Reeves said coolly and calmly, "I will break his neck." And he said Bass took his Winchester rifle at a quarter of a mile, broke this man's neck with one shot.
Wow.
Now, when the man told me that, chills went up and down my spine. But I never seen nothing like that in the movie. You know, and I'm saying, so then I got mad. I said, this man, I'm just trying to get some information. And he'd have told me the biggest lie I ever heard in my life.